Penn State made a run at Kalani Sitake.
Yeah.
We brought this up a little bit on the last episode of the podcast. At the time that we recorded, it was really just rumors and speculation. I think I told you, I think I told the Verballerhood that I was on board with that stuff. It seemed to me like, at least based on some of the stuff I heard, that, yeah, there was some actual smoke to that. And indeed there was. A lot's blown up since we last recorded, Dan. We last recorded on Monday morning. Monday night is when kind of everything went haywire. Now we're recording this on Wednesday morning, Wednesday midday, I guess, Eastern time. And Penn State is still without a head football coach. Kalani Sitake has opted to stay at BYU. It was a very frenetic 48 hours.
Yeah.
Will he stay? Will he go? We had folks from all across the BYU community swooping in, pitching in, doing whatever they could to try and keep Kalani Sitake in Provo. And it seems as though those efforts have worked. It sounds as if there was something of a handshake agreement in place for a bit between Penn State and Kalani Sitake, whether he got cold feet, had second thoughts. This was part of the plan all along. I can't put myself in his head, but Kalani Sitake going to be staying put at BYU. This has been widely celebrated around the BYU community. They love Kalani Sitake. As I think I said on the last episode, he's sort of like this larger-than-life character. He is revered by the BYU faithful. I feel happy for them that they were able to retain Kalani Sitake because, and this is no secret to people who have listened to this show for a while, I've had a hard time figuring him out, but the one thing that has never really been in doubt about him as a person is that across the board, everybody says he's a great guy. Across the board, his players love him. As I said, very revered within that community. So at least from a BYU standpoint, this is a pretty big show of might. You know, whether or not it was something that required the community to pitch in and keep him there, that's kind of beside the point. But the fact that they get to keep him, I think, is a success story for BYU and certainly for the Big 12, right? Because the Big 12 finds itself all too often on the outside looking in with some of these playoff discussions and just general conference power rankings and that type of thing. To retain a coach that is very much apparently in demand, that's a good thing for them. So I commend BYU for making that happen.
Yeah, and BYU has shown itself to be aggressive, not Texas Tech aggressive within the Big 12, but looking like the second most aggressive team in terms of spending, even though Kalani Sitake, I think prior to this flirtation with Penn State, wasn't terribly high paid for being a playoff-ish program head coach. So He's getting a raise, and you're right, BYU seemed to rally behind the scenes. I saw a lot of stories about, I don't know if I've ever actually had crumble cookies.
Me neither.
I think they're like a kid's cookie company of some kind. I've seen them. I've driven by them. But apparently their founder is a BYU booster of some kind, and he is credited with at least being one of the people who stepped up to make deposits into the Kalani Sitake piggy bank. That sounded weirder than I intended. And good for BYU, right? Good for the Cougars. Good for that program.
For BYU.
And Penn State is running an extremely unsuccessful, unprofessional administration with regard to finding the most important person in terms of generating campus revenue. Okay, guys. So Brian Kelly?
I am wearing my Penn State sweatshirt in solidarity here.
Yeah.
With the millions of people listening at
Billy
home
Napier?
Penn State fans. Indulge me for a second here to do a little bit of a tyrant.
A tyrant. Not so it's you're not a tyrant.
I mean, I could be. I don't know. It depends how this goes over.
Yeah.
So I don't know Pat Kraft, the athletic director at Penn State. Never met the guy. I thought the presser that he gave after they fired James Franklin was pitch perfect. Whatever you think of how they got rid of Franklin, the presser that he gave to fire up the fan base right after they made the decision, I thought he did a really good job with that. I was fired up after that. And furthermore, again, this is not a James Franklin conversation anymore, but I don't think he was wrong. I don't think Penn Staters as a fan base were wrong to want something of a change of scenery. It did feel like, to an extent, the relationship with Franklin had maxed out. Doesn't mean he's not a good coach. I think if people had a second chance at it, maybe they would undo that decision now, given what we know about this coaching search. But I understand at least that thought process, and I was fired up after that press conference.
Well, I think maybe they would think twice about hiring Pat Kraft more so than getting rid of James Franklin. But yes,
I can tell you that at the same time that press conference was going on, I had a couple threads going with people that know Pat Kraft, that have worked with Pat Kraft in some capacity. And none of them, Dan, not a single one of them trusted Pat Kraft with this hire.
Right.
Which to me was a bit of a red flag. Again, I don't know the guy. So when I came on this show, what feels like an eternity ago, I guess it was 50 some odd days ago, and we talked about where they might go with this hire. When I said Matt Rule and I talked that up as a possibility, and I got a lot of, you're crazy. I got a lot of, that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, I was with you on that, okay? But I'm telling you, I was cautioned that it might not make sense, given the trigger man here. That was my starting point in trying to evaluate where Penn State was going to go next. In fairness to him, I think at this point, it would probably still be premature to say that Pat Kraft has screwed up the hire, because we still don't know who is hired. Right? All we can confidently say is that he has very much screwed up the hiring process. This is not up for debate. We can debate whether or not the Matt Rule thing was real or if it made sense or whatever. But I think it's pretty clear at this point that Pat Kraft went on a wild goose chase. He tried to chase down the biggest names in the coaching industry. Many of them were happy to listen and even happier to get a raise as a result of it. That is where this search has really excelled, getting other people raises. I do not believe for a second the rumor that there was some sort of collusion against Penn State orchestrated by Jimmy Sexton, the super agent. Like, I don't buy that. That is not how the industry works. It just isn't.
Right.
But it very much to me feels like this was a coaching search driven more by the fan fiction side of the fan base and the names that would light up message boards, as opposed to being realistic and having a real plan. It feels, the deeper we get into this thing, Dan, that this was a coaching search based more on assumption that if you talk to enough big names, surely one of them will want to come here because we are Penn State.
Yeah.
And that just hasn't happened now. So the deal with Sitake, that, listen, I don't know how long that had been in the works. I heard anything from a couple days to a couple weeks, but regardless, it's not something that just popped up on like a weekend ski trip, right? They thought they had him. Kraft thought he had him. I saw our friend Richard Johnson reported out on X, the Everything app yesterday, that there was shock within the Penn State administration. They thought they had Kalani Sitake. Again, the error here was assumption. He didn't get pen to paper. It was a handshake agreement. So he assumed that the handshake deal was going to hold. When you go after a guy with roots this deep, I don't care where it is, you got to get pen to paper, man.
Yeah.
You got to get pen to paper, because whatever time there was between the handshake and what happened this week, that opened the door for second thoughts. That opened up doors for leaking it to the press. Somebody did. That opened up doors for getting the crumble cookie guy involved and maybe circumventing an AD at BYU who wasn't willing to pony up the cash.
Right.
So if you believe that to be true, and I do to an extent, kind of a baller move by Kalani Sitake.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I don't
kind
know
of
if
a baller move to go around a guy who maybe might let you walk, but you like being there, so you're going to find another, like, that kind of makes me like him even more if that's what happened. That would be like some real Game of Thrones stuff.
I wonder if he went to Central PA quietly and was like, I don't know if I want to be here.
Listen, I don't know where this leaves Penn State now. I really don't. And
I'll tell you where it leaves them, Ty. It leaves them staring at, like, I don't play fantasy baseball anymore. You ever have one of those waiver wire visits where you're like, I guess Todd Zeal. Right?
I tweeted this out. I had an auction draft years ago where I had to pay $35 for Sean Figgins.
Yeah.
This was Sean Figgins when he played on the Angels and was a second baseman.
Pretty good. He could fill up some stats. Come on.
He was fine. He was not worth that. And that is the direction I fear Penn State is headed right now, because at this point, the recruiting class is completely toast.
Yeah.
There are still good coaches out there.
Yeah.
And I think if you hire the right guy, whoever that might be, if that guy comes in and wins, if he's able to get a roster in place quickly via the portal, it's going to have to be by the portal. At this point, if he comes in, if he wins, if it looks like there is progress in any regard, people forget about stuff quick. That's just the world we live in. These news cycles are like 8 hours at a pop, and then we move on. So, yeah, if he comes in, whoever it is, assuming there is a guy, and he comes in and he wins, then, yeah, this will be forgotten. But I hope that they have a plan, because thus far it feels like hope was the plan. And that's a real issue when you're dealing with, as you said, the primary revenue generator within the athletic institution. Like, if they are going to drag this out, there needs to be a definitive list of guys that you think you can get and need to get on the line immediately, and then a secondary list of guys you know you can get, because they cannot let this drag on much longer than like a week from now. If we are recording a week from now and they still do not have a coach, that's when we start talking about Pat Kraft losing his job and somebody else needing to take the reins here and figure this thing out. But this has definitely taken a bad turn. I am not ready fully to commit to the fact that the entire thing was a disaster. It has not been good. But still, if they get somebody in there who can cobble this thing together in the portal and can go out there next year against, by the way, a very favorable schedule, and make this thing feel like it's going in a good direction, then this will be a thing of the past. But there have not been many positive signs thus far to lead me to think that that's even on the table.
This is a really interesting time for Penn State, right? Because nobody that they hire is going to make the fan base feel good, because the fan base knows that this is their 17th choice.
Yep.
So do you go with an up-and-comer who's somewhat unproven? Do you go with somebody that you're just like buying low and potentially getting out of a bad situation for them? Like, do you make a run at Dave Aranda or Mike Norvell, right? Somebody with huge program experience who might need a change of scenery, and Penn State might be able to deliver the money and whatever geography that could be interesting to them.
Or do you punt?
And just give Terry Smith a year?
Do you punt? Do you give Terry Smith a 3-year contract to see what he can do?
Right.
You know, and you sort of, you effectively punt if you do that. If you hit
But if that happens, but see, Pat Kraft loses his job. If Pat Kraft makes that move, if he's making a low ceiling move, essentially, which would be the viewpoint of, I think, Penn State fans, I can't speak for them, but if it were announced that Terry Smith is the hired head coach, it would probably be seen as a failure of a search, and he would lose his job.
I mean,
so he's got to think of his job too.
It was always going to be an uphill climb to go from James Franklin to a guy that the fan base, that the national college football mechanism would view as an upgrade.
Yeah.
Right. Because James Franklin's a top 10 caliber coach.
Yep.
The list of guys that you could get that would be seen as an upgrade to that it's very, very small. It's a handful of guys. Clearly, at this point, they haven't gotten any of them. Doesn't seem like any of them were truly interested, other than using Penn State to get a raise. So, yeah, you don't fire James Franklin just to hire Terry Smith. And
right.
And no offense to Terry Smith, a lot of people in the Penn State world love Terry Smith, and he definitely bleeds blue and white.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He said all the right things, and I think he has done his part down the stretch here to try and keep the team together, and the players certainly like him, as they do most interim coaches. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't make this move to hire Terry Smith. You make this move presumably because you have somebody better,
right? Because you think you have Mike Elko locked up, right?
Right. You make this move if you feel like you have a definitive answer for the problem,
right?
And it's growing increasingly clear by the day that he did not have that, or he left too much of this up to assumption.
Yeah, or he didn't have the foresight to see that jobs like Florida and LSU might be opening up, and that the pool of interested candidates was going to shrink by a good margin. Yeah.
Look, man, I called this out right away, and I was worried about it, and maybe with history as a guide, I was right.
Yeah.
I was worried about a South Carolina situation from back in the day when they fired a coach early because they thought they would get Tom Herman. I don't know if there was a Tom Herman out there this year, maybe in 2025 that was Lane Kiffin. But regardless, South Carolina made the move way back when. They wanted to get Tom Herman. Tom Herman ended up going to Texas. South Carolina ended up going in a much more disappointing direction.
Yep.
So
well,
it's
speaking of
feeling
which, Will
like it's
Muschamp
going in
is
that
available.
direction.
Will Muschamp's available.
Great.
Great. Yeah. There's an opportunity to do some funny stuff with this. It's not that funny to you, I understand. But like you can be like, oh, we got the guy from Missouri. I'm seeing here, it's Missouri State. We got Ryan Beard.
Yeah, it's like in Major League 2 when they get Hiroshi Kamikaze Tanaka. He used to play for the Giants, not those Giants, right?
Yeah. We
So
got
we'll see.
an Adrian Peterson.
We'll see. Yeah. We got the Adrian Peterson that played fullback for the Bears or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay. By the way, I think the Will Stein hire makes a good amount of sense for Kentucky. I'm positive they decided that they were willing to move on from Mark Stoops once they had back-channeled and known that Will Stein would be willing. Also, it appears that Tosh Lupoy, it's not official yet at the time of recording, is taking the Cal job. Obviously, he played for and coached at Cal, so Oregon losing both their coordinators after the postseason. They're both going to stick around, as are a lot of these guys sticking around. Brian Hartline, I believe, is sticking around in Columbus before heading down to Tampa. So, yeah, a lot of action, Ty, just not in State College.
Not in State College, man.
Man,
Well, there's action.
By the way, the whole time we were talking, I was thinking about like 2006 waiver wire picks. I was just like, Richard Hidalgo's a name, right? That's all I was thinking. Like Jeff Jenkins. Yeah.
Man, Penn State's going to have to go to the waiver wire to find their coach.
Yeah, Willie Taggart.
They're going to have to put in like their entire FOB budget to get Brian Dable.
Mike Riley.
Yeah. Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, we'll keep you up to speed on it. I've been trying to tweet through the storm. I don't know what the hell they're doing at this point. I have no idea. I have some guesses, but I'm not going to put it out there because I told you before my top three was Kalani Sitake, Brian Hartline, and Brian Dable. So I still got one left. We'll roll with that until a time when he's off the board as well and they go with somebody else, if they go with somebody else before the start of next season.